I'm 26 years old, about to be 27, it's actually kind of crazy. I was born in Inglewood, California, so Los Angeles, and then I grew up in Diamond Bar, which is a suburb within LA County.
Do you identify as Habesha?
I do. And I do because, so my dad is Eritrean and my mom is Ethiopian. My dad was born in Asmara, my mom was born in Addis Ababa. He grew up speaking Tigrinya, my mom grew up speaking Hadarinya because her family's from Harar. I think I was just always told, like, you're Habesha. Like, you're Habesha. Like, and I feel like because where I grew up in LA County and in LA, there's a huge Ethiopian Eritrean community. It felt like I was part of both, and I just think a way to help me understand community, my dad, not my mom, my dad, like, emphasized that we are Habesha. My dad grew up Muslim. I think half of his family is Muslim, half of his family is Christian, and my mom's family is very Muslim, and so they just felt like being Habesha didn't align with their culture and customs as it relates to being from Harar. Harar is the third most holiest site in Islam, right? So there's very much deep-rooted Islamic tradition and custom and culture there. And so I felt like they had more of an affinity to our East African neighbors than they did with the Habesha community, which to them was the Christian Orthodox Ethiopians and Eritreans.
Do you recall the first time you heard the word Habesha?
Yeah, I think it was honestly it was when I was a kid. We would be my dad, he works at Caltrans, and it's the California State Department of Transportation, and there were, Ethiopian and Eritrean people that also worked there because he's an engineer, and our people love that profession. And so when they would meet with people, the first thing that they would ask is Habesha? ? And so that opened up the conversation for, oh, okay, no, I'm not Habesha, I'm from Eritrea, blah, blah, blah. Or, yes, I am Habesha. I even say it now, when people are oh, where are you from? And it'll be a non-Ethiopian, non-Eritrean person. I'm oh yeah, I'm Habesha. Just assuming that, the word has been democratized in a way that people, would understand. But I feel there's a lot, especially recently, and I guess with the rise of social media and more information being readily available, that word holds so much weight that it can, so much weight, and so that it can be perceived as you thinking, you're better than X or Y. It's also hard for me too, because my dad is born in Asmara, family in Eritrea, and my mom grew up in Ethiopia, and it's just, I feel for me, the easiest way to describe and define how I identify is Habesha, versus going into the semantics of, oh yeah, my dad was born in Asmara, he was was raised in Eritrea, and then he moved to Addis Ababa, and then my mom was born in Addis Ababa, but her family's actually from Harar, and XYZ. It's just easier for me to just be I'm Habesha. It's in the Quran too. This isn't a new word. Habesh, it was a word to describe the people of the East African region in the Mediterranean and the Middle Eastern Peninsula. So this during the time of the Prophet and whatnot. And so this word predates our generation, the generation before us, and the generation before that. And so for me, it's a colloquial term to group both Eritreans and Ethiopians. And that's how I use it too, because I am Eritrean and Ethiopian, right? So I'm just yeah, I'm Habesha.
I'd love to hear also if you know the historical origins or what you've been told about where this word
I forgot, it's an Arabic word, Habesh. And I think it might mean, honestly, it might mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it might mean blackface, or just, dark person. It wasn't just Ethiopia, the region of Ethiopia and Eritrea, but it was also Sudan and Somalia, that entire East African region, because they were so close to, to the Middle East, and so, there were Habesha people in the Middle East during the time of the Prophet, the first person to, call out the adhan during the Prophet's time, his name was Bilal, and his mother was a Habesha slave. She came from that region, and so I feel this word was just used as a descriptor to describe the people that came from a particular region in Africa who looked like them but had darker tone. Like I said, I'm Muslim, and so when I have this cultural aspect, I try to reconcile it with the religious one too. And I've gone to Black Muslim lecture series at NYU, and they talk about al-Habesh, the people and the region that those people come from, and to me, it's like, we shouldn't be looking at this as a word that like divides us. It was just used simply as a way to describe like where we came from. And so it's really interesting how language evolves over time and how people evolve over time. But those are the origins of that word, and it came from the Arabs. Like Ethiopia itself is a Greek word. My mom's side of the family is very Harari, like, you know, like from our garbs to like the food that we eat to our language to like the way that we decorate our homes and everything. It's a huge sense of pride, and it's honestly a dying language, which is very sad. You know, like I would always eat injera. Like my sister and my brother don't really like injera. Like me and my dad, we love injera. We love like, you know, like siga, we love ketfo, we love all of that. And so when I felt like when I was with my mom's side of the family, they didn't do those things that I was like accustomed to as they did as my dad's side of the family. So I felt like I needed to hold on to that piece of myself. It was like, you know, trying to like bridge those two gaps of identity. And so I remember when, you know, they were trying to teach us like the differences and like our tribes and whatnot, it like went over my head. But I knew they spoke different languages, but like, you know, when you're a kid, you're like, I don't know why you speak different languages. Like, I just thought that's the way it is. And I remember when like my aunt, my mom's younger sister's like, well, when people ask you, what are you, what do you say? And I'm like, I say I'm Habesha. And she's like, no, you're not. And I remember I was like 7, 8 years old. She was like, you're not Habesha. I was like, what do you mean I'm not Habesha? This entire time, the way that I see like my dad interact with like fellow Eritreans and Ethiopians is like using that word, right? Like you see it referenced in so many places. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not Habesha? And she's like, we don't identify as that, we're Muslim. I feel like they also didn't understand the origins of that word too. Because if they had understood the origins of that word, then they wouldn't have needed a religious thing, right? Because if this word is referenced in the Quran, if this word is like referenced in the Sunnah, which is like in the Hadith, which is like the Prophet's teachings or whatnot, you would realize that this word isn't what you think it means. And so now I'm like, you know, 8 years old, kind of confused, and I'm just like, well, my dad's saying that we're Habesha, and my mom's sister is saying we're not Habesha. So then what are we, right? And this was all within the context of being a black kid in a predominantly white school, right? So I'm also grappling with that part of my identity, right? And it's not like, you know, my sister's very like light skinned, and then I'm like the darker skinned one. So people were like, you're not sisters. My mom's also light skinned. They're like, that's not your mom. It's like, why are we like having these conversations within our own community when we got bigger fish to fry outside of our community where these white people, you know, are being racist? It just to me felt like I was like, this is not a battle I'm going to pick. This is not a battle I'm fighting. Like, I'm Habesha, I am Ethiopian, I'm Eritrean, I'm Muslim. I'm very proud of that. You can be more than one thing, and I feel like a lot of people, especially in the older generations, believe that you can't be more than one thing. Like, identity is fluid. It's a function of pride that goes into my aunt saying, no, you're not Habesha. You're Harari, like you're gay, like you're Muslim, like you need to own that part of your identity, and that's what you should say first, not that you're Habesha. And I'm just like, whoa, like that's how you identify. By all means, you go for it. But for me, like, you know, you grew up in a 2-parent Harari household. My dad is Eritrean, my mom is Muslim. I grew up in America. I feel like some parents of like kids who like grew up here did a really good job of like teaching them the history of like their origin. And I feel like, so my dad and my uncle, they basically got booted out of Ethiopia because they did not participate in the Ethiopian-Eritrean War.
The border war.
Yeah. And it was Eritrea that wanted them to like be on the Eritrean side. And this is like when they were living in Addis, like they had gone to University of Addis Ababa and everything. And my dad and his brother, they were like, no. So I feel like it's left a very bitter taste in my dad's mouth as it relates to having that source of like national pride, because he felt like Eritrea was trying to subject him to something that he like didn't want to do, and he felt like you shouldn't do that to your people. As it relates to like teaching us about like what's going on, I felt like he didn't want to expose us to the complexity of what's going on back home. He'd be like, yeah, like everything is good, everything is cool. Like he would go back once a year, and like sometimes like we would go, and then like when we lived there.
Like to Addis or Asmara?
Addis.
Okay.
And yeah, like my dad went to Eritrea for the first time after like 40 years, or like, 40 years, like 2 years ago. Like when they opened up the borders. Imagine, like you grow up in a house and then you're not able to go back to it. And then 40 years later, all of a sudden it's like right there, right? And I know that was like very difficult for him. And so I feel like and it's not even just like an Ethiopian Eritrean thing. I think it's just like an African dad thing where they're like, hold on, like their secrets very close to their chest. And I'm not saying like the history of Ethiopia and Eritrea is a secret, but I think his experience he held very close to his chest because for whatever reason. And so I felt like I didn't get that perspective from him. I think it's a little bit better now that I'm older. And then from my mom, like, it wasn't the history of Harar or the history of, you know, the people. It was more about like her talking about the people in her family and like what they did. And then when I moved back to Ethiopia and when I moved to Addis in 2010, that's when I learned about all of this stuff. I took like a history class in school, and you know, it's really interesting. I will say, it's kind of like growing up in America, and the way that we are taught history and learn history here is that like we're the better ones, we're the best ones, like we're the people, we're the heroes in the story. And that's how like history was taught to me in Addis Ababa. Like Ethiopia is like the hero in the story, which is really, really interesting because you're like, well, my dad grew up in Eritrea, and although he has his own difficulties with his experience, he would like call this out as a blatant lie, like what they were saying. And it's like, to your point, it's like, are we sure? It's like similar to like what they're doing here, right? And like, you know, like the whole like anti-slavery campaign that's going on in like Florida and stuff like that. Like, no, like they want it to work and stuff like that. It's like, that's not true, right? You need to have the people who've experienced those stories pass down, like, you know, document like what those people actually went through, and pass it down so their stories don't get lost. Like when I lived in Addis, like, you know, there was like this source of pride, and, you know, like Prime Minister was fantastic and all these things. But then you look at the state of the country and you're like, how is this true? Unemployment's crazy. Poverty is insane. And you're like, is your government actually as great as you think it is? Because if it was, then why is it letting its people suffer in this manner? I didn't like it. I wasn't a fan. I felt so bad, like just leaving my house. Like, if there's one thing that I learned from my 2 years of living in Ethiopia, it's to be extremely grateful. That is like the lesson that I took from that, is like to express constant gratitude. Even if you don't want to be grateful, to express gratitude, just because it could be so much worse for you. For a country that has so much potential, that's like where they're at in terms of like level of living and quality of life. You have this new prime minister who joins in, and, you know, he wins the Nobel Peace Prize, and he's like, you know, brokered agreements with Eritrea to open like the borders and all the stuff, and then like turns back around and all of a sudden declares like this crazy ass war against this ethnic group. And it's just like, wait, like, you take 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. It's like, what are you doing? You know, in Tigray, like I have family there, like I haven't heard from in like a very long time, right? So it's like I'm really good at compartmentalizing, but it's like when you really think about it, it's like you don't like it's just so fucked up. Like it's actually so fucked up what's going on over there, and like it makes it very difficult for me to like say that I'm Ethiopian like with this sense of pride. And I feel like using the word Habesha, like, you know, like closing the loop, using the word Habesha has allowed me to feel a part of a bigger community, because in my head it's talking about that particular region and like the communities of both Eritrea and Ethiopia, and not just like Ethiopia itself. It's very difficult to have pride when you know that people are in a constant state of suffering back home.
Yeah. I guess like explaining more about how your parents' like religion and ethnicity puts them within like the society of their country.
Yeah. So like my dad is half Eritrean, so he's half Tigray, Eritrean, and then he's half Amara.
You guys have a lot in your family.
Yeah, we do. There's so much going on. Even like, yeah, there's so much going on. So his dad's family is like from Gojam, like Bahardar in Ethiopia. I think being Muslim has like helped my parents like be part of the larger community. But as it relates to how I identify, like when people ask me straight up, are you Ethiopian or Eritrean? I like go into the whole, like, you know, oh, my dad was like growing up here and like all this stuff. But to me, all I know is Ethiopia because I've been there 3 times. I lived there for 2 years. On my Instagram bio, it has the Ethiopian flag. My experience is like, I lived in Ethiopia. I've never been to Eritrea. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to have the chance to go, right? You know, being a Muslim, like, you know, Ethiopian, Eritrean, if you're not Harari, is rare. Not rare, but it's like, it's not been my experience. Like even like let's use New York City for an example, where there's a lot of different types of people here, right? It's like probably one of the most diverse cities I've ever been in. It's 8 million people jam-packed to 5 boroughs. And you have a lot of Ethiopians here, you have a lot of Eritreans here. I haven't met a lot of Ethiopian Eritrean Muslims here. There's been like a handful that I've met. They're not the majority. And of the Ethiopian Muslims that I've met, they're from Harab. So I probably already know them because our community is already very small and tight-knit. I've met quite a few Eritrean Muslims, which is like really nice. But when we're talking to each other, we bond over the Islamic component of our identity more than we do the East African. Like when we hang out, it's probably like at Juma prayer at NYU, right? We're not going to an Ethiopian Eritrean event. It's more like a Muslim thing, like we'll host iftar. That's kind of been like the bonding factor. It could probably be said the same for like my parents too. Like the reason why my mom probably felt like more of an affinity towards the Harari group was not only because they shared that Harari like identity, but because they were Muslim, and so we had a lot of the same traditions. Like we'll do Eid together, we'll do Ramadan together, we'll do Arafah together. A lot of Harari like culture and customs are rooted in Islam, and that was like what I was like accustomed to growing up.
So then you would say like you don't hang out with that many like Habesha Christians?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah. And not even that I don't hang out with them. I feel like for like making friends as an adult is hard. It's not like I'm doing anything on purpose or like they're doing anything on purpose. Like I have a few like Ethiopian Christian friends. As long as you're cool and like you're a good person, like that's what matters to me. Because I have so many other things I need to figure out. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like I've felt it in like New York City. Like I've actually felt like unwelcomed in certain spaces. Like we'll go to parties and they'll play like Habesha music at the party, right? And I'm just like, well, I don't know how to assista, like I can't dance to this, but I know the lyrics, you know. And so there would be like a group of them dancing over there, and I don't feel comfortable enough to go and join in with them.
Who would you say is like the majority of who you hang out with?
Like here in New York?
Yeah.
I have like a lot of different friends, but my two closest friends are Somali, and they're Muslim. I have like a lot of black friends. Like they're black, and then they're like, you break it down into, some of them are West African, right? Some of them are Caribbean, some of them are East African. And they're all great, and I love them. And so it's not my inability to be able to mesh with people that outside of Islam. I just feel like there is something with like the Ethiopian Christian, Ethiopian Muslim thing that is like bigger than me, that I have like, that I'm not privy to, that I feel like plays a role in how we interact with each other when we're in the same spaces here.
You've mentioned like not being able to go back to Eritrea, and not knowing when you're going back to Ethiopia. Like, can you expand more on why you don't feel comfortable?
Yeah, I can tell you why I don't feel. I love traveling. I'm an avid traveler. Like I've been to 31 countries. I'm really tired of traveling now, so I've kind of taken a break. Like I say this with the most humility and love. I just feel like I would not be able to be comfortable there, like in Addis Ababa. Like Asmara, like I don't even speak a lick of Tigrinya, so I know that's like out the picture for me unless I'm like going with my dad, right? But as it relates to Ethiopia, I do speak, you know, decent enough Amharic to like get around. Literally, I went to Senegal at the end of last year, the end of 2022, and I had a 3-hour layover in Addis Ababa. And my phone has an international plan, and it works everywhere. It works in Senegal, it works in Kenya. I spent like 6 weeks in Nairobi. I loved Nairobi. So I like landed Bole International Airport, and I turn on my phone and it says, I get that T-Mobile text message and it says, your phone does not work here, XYZ, XYZ. And I remember my friend, he is Eritrean, and he went to Ethiopia for 2 weeks for a wedding, ended up staying there for 2 months. That's because he had a lot of friends there that are wealthy. Like if you don't have money in Addis Ababa, you're not going to have a good time. He like got stomach poisoning like every other week. Like I remember when I first moved to Ethiopia, I was in and out of the hospital for 3 months because I had parasitic worms in my stomach from like drinking bad water. This is like a terrible experience. Like you just moved to a new country and like you dropped like 30 pounds because someone gave you bad water. And not to say that would happen again, but I feel like I have to be more cautious and like more vigilant as it relates to going back. And like if I'm going on vacation, I don't want to have to be super cautious and super vigilant. You do have to be cautious and vigilant to a certain degree, but like to the point where I'm just like, I'm not gonna even like book this plane ticket. Like there's testament to that. That's like number one. Number two, my family, there's just so much like family expectation when you go back home. I have like people hitting me up asking me for like hundreds and thousands of dollars like every other week. I was like, yo, I'm trying to figure it out here in New York City. Like, New York City's not cheap, you know? And that goes back to Ethiopia not being able to provide the quality of life that it should be able to for its people. It's like all these things that Ethiopians are proud of, it's like, in spite of like what the West did to Africa, but it's like, who cares about how you're perceived outside of your country? What matters is how your people in your country feel about you. And you've been a failure. $1 is 100 birr over there. That's crazy. When I first moved there, it was like 25. Right? So inflation's crazy, black market's crazier. But if I go back home and everyone's expecting me to like do this, do that, bring 2 like suitcases filled with all of this and all of that, I'm like, look, I'm good. I'm not being go. Now on top of that, number 3 is, maybe forcing the marriage issue. Like, no, I don't want to get married. Like, stop bringing these people over so you can ask me to like, oh, what are your thoughts on this guy? Oh, he's an eligible bachelor. What are your thoughts on this guy? And I'm like, no, like I'll get married to whoever I want on my own time. Honestly, I feel like there's just like a lot of like, I'm dealing with a lot of children when I go back home. Like grown ass adults. Like I feel like I'm dealing with children and I'm just like, I'm good. So I think those are like the 3 main reasons why I feel uncomfortable in going back.
You mentioned that you grew up like primarily around white folks. Like, can you describe how you built your HABESHA community as you've grown up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Diamond Bar, and Diamond Bar is a suburb in LA County. Our claim to fame is that Snoop Dogg also lives in Diamond Bar. I grew up in a, not even white, predominantly Asian, white and Asian community, and at my elementary school, there were 5 black kids in my class, like in my cohort, like in my grade. 3 of us were Ethiopian and Eritrean, so there was like the Eritrean family that I grew up nearby, so we like grew up together. So it was 3 of them and then like 2 black American kids. We kind of just stuck together in a way. And what's also interesting is that like we were smart kids. Like all of us were really, really smart. I remember I won like the school spelling bee. I came 2nd in state, and I remember I won the school spelling bee and I beat an Asian kid. He was Chinese. And his parents, I remember, after school that day, I was in 4th grade, he was in 5th grade. After school that day, he pointed me out because his parents were like, well, who beat you? And he pointed me out. It's like a little black girl with pigtails. And they were like, how did you let a black person beat you? Now, like, you're not only in your, like, you're removed from your community, and now you're in this other community where people are trying so hard to other you and make you feel inferior and less than because of the color of your skin. Because these were kids of immigrants too. They were just different immigrants. They were Asian immigrants, right? The white kids, they like grew up there. Their families grew up there. But it was really interesting, and it like kind of like brings back like, that whole concept of like model minority, which I didn't really even know was a thing up until like I was in high school. I had my small community, which was like, the Eritrean kids that like we grew up with. So we leaned on each other a lot. If you didn't have a solid grasp of who you were, you would have easily been able to influence the way that you perceived yourself. But very much like held on to it. I was like, yeah, I'm a black girl and I beat you in spelling bee, so what? And like growing up like in a predominantly like Asian white neighborhood was really interesting. And what was even more interesting is like when the black guys and the black boys did not like me because I was too dark. I remember black guys did not like me at all because they were like, no, Samara's too dark. It was literally like my skin color, which I could not change. I remember 7th grade, we were at like this little dance thing, and there was like this light skinned girl. Like when I got to 7th grade, it was like more diverse. There were like a lot of biracial people. There were like more black kids, there were more Hispanic kids. And I remember we were at this dance, and it was this half black and half Asian kid. And my friend, her name, she was like light skinned. She was like, go dance with Summer. I don't want to dance with you. He was like, no, Summer's too dark. And I'm like, yo, that's crazy. And then like 7 years later, he like slides into my Instagram DMs trying to take me on a date. And I'm like, no, I remember when you told me I was too dark in 7th grade. He's like, nah, like we were just kids. And I was like, no. I was like on this anti-black guy campaign for a very long time because I didn't like the way they made me feel. Kids are mean. Kids are very mean. At a certain point, like I mentioned, like, having to be very solid in who you are as a person, my like sense of identity wavered for a very long time, like from high school into college. Like, I was not dating black guys. They weren't dating me either. I was like trying to figure out like my role in Islam and like trying to see like, my parents didn't really enforce it on us. So it's like trying to figure out like, do I want to be a practicing Muslim, or am I just gonna be Muslim by name? Or I could like abandon religion like altogether and like be like, this isn't for me. Because I was very conflicted, I was just like very volatile as a person. I like sold myself out in so many different ways just because I didn't want to be like, there was a point in time where I was like, I'm not black. I literally was like, I'm not black. I was like, I'm East African. Like, I'm not black. Like, do not put me in the same group as you. It was just so bad. And my sister was like, how dare you say that? Like, you can't say that. I'm like, look, they don't want me either. Like the black guys weren't fucking with me. Like girls like weren't really being my friend. And and then like you have like my parents like, saying like Islam, like, like you should consider it more. And then I like go to the mosque and I'm the only black person there and people are walking up to me like, oh, so like when did you convert? And I'm just like, you know, there are people who are born black and Muslim too, right? Like, from the days of like the Prophet, like I was mentioning to you. And so it was just, I like didn't like the association of being black. I just felt like it made me feel ways that I didn't want to feel. And I like abandoned it altogether. I was like, nope. I remember like the black guys at my school, like they would like fetishize me sometimes. Like they were like, oh, like you have, like they would like touch my hair like all the time. I'm like, I don't know you, don't touch my hair. They're like, where are the tracks? Where are the tracks? You know, like random guys just like touching your hair and stuff like that. Like they also couldn't believe that I was black, number one. Number two, like they were like, well, if you're African or if you're East African and you're like Ethiopian, right? And like, you know how Ethiopian women and like Eritrean women are portrayed in the media, right? They're like fair skinned, they have like those like Coca-Cola bodies and all that. They're like, well, you don't look like that. So like, that invalidates who you are as a person. So I felt very invalidated in almost every single aspect of my identity, like when I was like a teenager, like when I was in high school and in college. I remember I was dating this one guy. He was his family was from Bangladesh. He was Muslim. We dated like on and off for 2 years. This is when I was in college. And, you know, he was Muslim. He was like the first Muslim guy I dated. I was like, oh my God, my mom's gonna be so happy I found a Muslim man. And he knew I was Ethiopian. Like, you know, he was just like, wow, it's so cool. Like, you know, when I would teach him stuff, like, you know, the food and like the coffee, and he was just like enamored by the culture. He's like, wow, like your culture is so rich. I didn't know that before. And so it felt really cool. And I remember this like still sticks with me to this day. He's like, when my mom meets you, remember to pretend that you're Sri Lankan and not Ethiopian. Yo, like when hearing it, like, and I'm just like, okay, like I guess, like, you know, because your mom is like super conservative and stuff like that. But like when I had registered like what he had said to me, I was like, oh, you're trying to take my blackness, like you're trying to like not take my blackness away from me, but you're making it apparent that my blackness is undesirable to you and therefore undesirable to your parents and would disqualify me from being a great partner to you in the future. I literally, after that moment, I dove straight into being like Pan-African, like being as black as I could be, like getting more affiliated with the culture and like all this stuff, because I was just like, there's this little brown boy is not about to tell me that I have to pretend to be Sri Lankan to get his mom's approval. You saying nigga here, nigga there, you're co-opting black culture, and then you're telling your mom that to your black girl, she shouldn't be, like she should pretend to not be black.
Damn, I'm sorry for that experience.
Yo, that's just so crazy. Like, yo, pretend that you're Sri Lankan. I was like, yo, do you not know?
Yeah.
Do you not know who my people are? And I realize now that I'm talking to you right now, that literally was the turning point for me. Because after that, I was like, I've only been with black guys ever since. And like now I'm just like, what was my villain origin story? It's like when that stupid motherfucker told me that when I meet your mom, like when you meet my mom, you have to pretend to be Sri Lankan and not Ethiopian. And that also made me like realize was like, why did he feel so comfortable saying that to me? Was it because he also saw that my sense of identity as it relates to being black and as it relates to being like Ethiopian was also wavering? Like did he see that, and so he thought it would be okay for him to tell me that?
Like something that you mentioned was like this HABESHA look, right?
Yeah. So like the way that we're like portrayed and like the way that beauty standards are communicated to us and the way that we're portrayed in like media, not even as like Ethiopian or Eritrean, but as like black women in general, is like you have the fair skinned ones, like you don't have like the dark skinned ones, right? And so I felt like, you know, growing up, my parents would be like, no, don't go outside, you're gonna get darker, or like make sure you put sunscreen everywhere or else you're gonna get darker. I feel like there's a lot of colorism rooted in our culture. It's so crazy because like when I think about it, like I'm not even really that dark when I look at myself in the mirror. I'm just like, yo, they really played me. They really played me.
I think this is like something that's going to be interesting in the project because it's coming out in a couple of interviews, and I've experienced it too, where like I'm the darkest in my family, but I'm objectively not dark.
Yeah, so I'm the darkest as it relates to my siblings and my mom. I got my skin tone from my dad, but he's a man. Men can get away with it, right? But like, you know, like my dad would be like, oh, like, you know, your chocolate skin is so beautiful, right? But then in the same breath, he'd be like, well, don't go outside because you're gonna get darker. I felt like I wasn't pretty because I was dark. And I felt that way for a very, very long time.
Can you remember like the first time you felt that way explicitly?
Yeah, I remember like I used to play soccer growing up, like literally since I was a kid up until like injury, tore my ACL in high school. It was my sister and I for a while. My brother's like 9 years younger than me, and my sister and I are a year and a half apart. So it was just the two of us for a very long time. And my sister's very light skinned. And then there's me, because my mom's light skinned, my dad's dark skinned. I remember they were like throwing us into like a bunch of different like after school activities to figure out like what would stick to like get the kids to like be outside and be active and whatnot. And I really, really liked soccer. I loved it. And you know, when my parents were like deciding on like what extracurricular they throw us into, my parents were having a debate on whether or not they should let me pursue soccer because I would be playing outside in the sun and it would make me darker. So I started playing soccer when I was 7. The first time I went to Ethiopia, I was 7. And I remember we went to Ethiopia and it was like meeting my mom's side of the family, meeting my dad's side of the family for the very first time. And they were like, we don't remember her being this dark. Yo, like they would say it like outright in front of me. And I remember my mom told me a story about when she sent my baby picture back home. They're like, wow, we didn't expect Maria to have a black baby. But even like from the day I was born, they made my color and my skin tone such a topic of conversation. I felt like I could never escape it. Even guys in Ethiopia, even guys darker than me in Addis Ababa would be like, no, like you're too dark. Like, how are you American? They literally used to call me Baricho.
It sounds like Baria.
Yeah.
Is it slave?
Yeah. And so that's literally what it Baricho, like that's like the nickname version of it. And so that was literally my nickname when I was in 7th grade in Ethiopia, and I remember they would like literally throw rocks at me, Baricho. And then I was like, well, that's because they like you. You know when your parents tell you, oh, that boy's being mean to you because he likes you? I'm like, no, they actually not fucking with me because I'm dark skinned. And my parents really invalidated that too. They were like, oh, my dad's like, well, you're being like, you know, if you be quiet and you just do your work, like they're not gonna bother you. I'm like, no, nigga, that's not the way it works. That's literally not the way it works. And they would be like, how are you American? You're too dark skinned. Like they don't make them like, they don't look like that over there, right? Because like the way that they're portrayed in the media, like it's like, you know, lighter people. You move back home and, you know, the half black, half Asian guy says, ew, I don't want to dance with her because she's too dark. So I really felt like, and it's so sad, it's like a piece of yourself that you can't change. Like in my head, I was a lot darker than I actually am because of the way people made me feel. My dad did not want to get me braces. So I also had like, you know, like a little gap in between my teeth. I had like, you know, my hair is nice. I have like, you know, like cute hair. It's like cute curly hair. And
how did that impact? Because I think that's something also interesting with East Africa is you do have like such a mixture of features. So like, how was it having like darker skin but having like quote unquote nice hair? Yeah,
well, like people did not believe I was African. I think when I moved to San Francisco, this is like straight out of college, I would get Afro-Latina, I would get Brazilian, I would get, when my hair was straight, I would get Sri Lankan, ironically enough. I was very confused. I'm not confused anymore. I was confused for a very long time. And it's because like, you know, like you're like heavily influenced by your environment, like when you're like younger, right? So like if everyone's saying the same thing about you after a certain point in time, like you believe what they say about you. And so, yeah, I really like thought I was like butt fucking ugly until I was like maybe 17. And then the black guy started like, oh, actually, you're cute over there. I'm like, oh, really? Like mix all that together. And then you add the fact of like how black women are treated in this country and all that. And then like, you know, being Muslim, right? And people walking up to me like, oh, like when did you convert? Like, let us know if you need any help. And I'm like, yo, convert is crazy. Because they couldn't believe that a black person like would be born into the deen. I feel like living in New York City and like now, with like identity being fluid now, right? Where like so many people can identify as so many different things all at the same time, like living here in this city. And especially in the day and age that we are, we have like more information like available to us. And so we're more sensitive about people's experiences as it relates to how they identify. But for the longest time, I really felt lost. And it's not like I could lean on my sister because my sister like did not get that same treatment. In fact, like I feel like I was treated more like more harsh in our household because I was dark skinned. And it's so funny, I see it with my cousins. So I mentioned my cousins, they grew up right next to us. There's 2 boys and 2 girls, and the 2 girls, one's very light skinned and one's darker. Not dark skinned, she's darker. And the way that they treat her is completely different than the way that they treat her lighter skinned sister. They have forced her to become an adult much quicker. The same thing with me, right? But that could also be a function of being the firstborn, right? Where you just have to like grow up really fast because of like virtue of like the pecking order in which you were born. I felt very isolated for a very long time.
Like from the Ethiopian, Eritrean?
Just from everybody, honestly. Like for my sister and I have a great relationship now. We live together.
She moved here.
Yeah, she moved here. Yeah, so we live together now. But like when we were like in like college and like high school, like I didn't want anything to do with her. I was like, you don't understand my experience, and I'm not going to sit here and try to explain it to you. Therefore, there is nothing for us to talk about.
So it was like that dominant in your experience.
Yeah, no, it's huge. It was so big. It was like, and then you have like my parents, like if I did something really, really good in school versus if my sister did something really, really good in school, like she would get like all the, like, you know, all like the acclaim and all like the laudits and everything, and be like, for me, it was like, oh, well, that's expected. And people would make me sound like, people would make me out to be bitter. They're like, oh, well, you're just bitter. And I'm like, no, I'm not bitter. Like, this is my lived experience. Like, imagine for like the first 20 years of your life, you're told that you're too dark to be beautiful. You're too dark for this, you're too dark for that. Even though you're really not that dark relatively. Like, I remember like even getting my makeup done, like when I was like going to homecoming, like the makeup artist like needing to combine so many different types of like foundation colors because like they couldn't find my color. Or like I studied abroad in Spain, and I remember it's probably one of the whitest countries you could go to, and I remember being like fetishized when I was there. They're like, wow, like we've never seen anybody that looks like you. And you know, like initially you're like, oh, that's such a great compliment, but then you realize, oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's like they're looking at me like I'm a zoo animal. You go from like the first 20 years of your life being like, oh, like you're dark, like blah blah blah, and then after that, like, you know, like you kind of grow up, like you're more feminine, and people are like fetishizing you for the way that you look. I dated a Jewish guy, and he was like, oh my god, my queen of Sheba. His pickup line to me was, are you Ethiopian? Like literally in the club. And I like looked at him, and he's kind of cute. I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah. And he was just like, you know, you're the lost 13th tribe of Israel. And I was like, are you Jewish or something? And he like pulled out like this fat, thick gold chain Star of David on it. He was so excited to show me off and parade me around town. Like, look at my HABESHA girlfriend. Look at my queen of Sheba. And it was like refreshing compared to like the brown guy who was like, oh, you need to pretend that you're Sri Lankan. And so I took it as, it was like the antithesis of that. I took it as like, oh my god, finally someone who's loving me for like the beautiful black woman that I am. But it's like, is he actually loving you for the beautiful black woman you are, like on your inside? Or is he loving you because you're black, because you're like an exotic being? Like, it was a lot.
It sounds like high school you didn't have much of like a community, but in college, would you say you like started building a community?
Yeah, I mean, the community was always there. We always had like our like Harari community to lean on if we wanted, but it was more so me tapping into that community and me like going into that community, and I felt like they weren't receptive to me at all.
Really? Your own, like the Harari community?
Yeah, because most Harari kids are fully Harari. We were like, me and my cousins, because my cousins I grew up right next to us, their dad also married a Harari. So we're half. Like, even within my community, I felt like I wasn't even fully part of the community because I was half Harari. And that's why I was a little bit defiant. And I was like, damn, no, I am HABESHA. You know, it's like, you know, and so other myself before people could other me in a way. And I think I really found community like within like the African diaspora, like not Ethiopian, not Eritrean, but like everybody else. And it translated into like the types of people that I dated after college, right? Like I dated a Kenyan guy, I dated Nigerian guys, because I feel like they appreciate me for being me and not like the Jewish guy who's like, oh, like here's like my black token girlfriend, or like, you know, my own community who was like, oh, well, you're half Harari, so you're like not really Harari in a way. And I remember my mom telling me that, like, even my mom tell me now to this day, she's like, when you marry someone, make sure he's Harari, like, and I'm like, mom, it's not happening, like, you didn't even do that. Like, I have a lot of diverse friends, I have a lot of Asian friends, I have like Latino friends, and you know, obviously like now living in New York, some of them do live here and I hang out with them often. It's just much easier when like you have like your Muslim East African girls and you're just like, oh, well, we probably grew up in very similar households, so it's easier to relate in so many different ways. What really matters to me is like not where you're from, but like are you a good person? Like, are you like a growth, like, you know, do you have like a growth oriented mindset? Are you like trying to do big things? And because if you're just like with the people that look like you and live your experience all the time, and you like forget what else is out there. Kind of being ostracized by my own community allowed me to find harmony within other people. My sister will probably tell you completely different stuff that was so crazy, like even within the same household, like you would have such varying experiences. She benefited a lot from being like the lighter skinned kid in the house. She doesn't realize that she benefited a lot from it until I tell her like my experience. She's like, oh wow, like I didn't even realize that. So like when I bring up like the topic of colorism, she's like, I'm not going to debate you on that. She's like, I believe everything that you say, because it's like so rampant and so prevalent in our communities. It's like, yeah, we're all black, but then there's like, you have like a spectrum of different shades, and you know, people fall in like, you know, different parts of that spectrum. And then you have like, you know, like your mom telling you don't put that makeup on because it makes you look too dark, right? Yeah. It's just like very disheartening.
And did you feel like you had any other people you could relate with in that experience?
No. No. I mean, now I do, right? Because I'm also like more vocal about my experience. Back then, like I wouldn't say anything. Like I literally remember like when I lived in Ethiopia. Have you heard of Fair and Lovely?
Yes.
My mom would literally like buy me Fair and Lovely all the time. And she'd be like, put this on your face. I just thought it was like smoothing out like my face because I had like hyperpigmentation or whatever. No, that shit was like meant to make you lighter. And that's because like even Indian people have their own colorism like rooted in their culture, right? And you like Nigerians, and there's so many different communities that have like colorism running rampant. And so like your mom telling me to like put on Fair and Lovely at age 13 is crazy. But I've like been really like my own support system for a very long time, and so like now I'm very unapologetic in who I am because it took a lot for me to get here. As it relates to the larger African diaspora, I felt like West African men in particular love us East African women. They will tell like, they will say all these things about us. Oh, like they're so beautiful. They're so soft. And I'm just like, y'all just think like what you're like actually saying is that the West African women are difficult to impress upon, and us Habesha women are soft and therefore more submissive and more docile. It was a complete like as it relates to like West African men versus Black American men. It was like two completely different reactions that I was getting. Like the West African men were like, oh my god, like you're so beautiful, like da 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 da. And then like you had like the Black American dudes like, I'm actually gonna go date the Latina that's over there. And so that was like my experience there. And you know, honestly, you gotta go where you're celebrated, right? And so like if they're, you know, tooting my horn, like that's where I'm gonna go, right? Because for the longest time, I felt like no one was doing that for me. I probably took that a little bit too far, but I mean, you learn now. You know, like I've gotten older, right? You know, like my teeth have gotten straighter. I know how to like put on makeup. I know how to dress well and stuff like that. So outside of the things that I can't control, like my skin tone, like my hair and all that stuff, I feel like I've done well in the other areas. And like pretty girl privilege is a thing, right? Like if you're objectively pretty or like, you know, subjectively pretty, like it opens doors for you. Just like the way being a white man opens doors for you, right? It's an unearned privilege. And so you have to be cognizant and recognize that you do have that privilege regardless if you worked for it or if you didn't. But I think for me, like, as someone who thought, you know, someone like, you know, like I said, like I thought it was really ugly up until like age 17. That's like a lot of years. Like at 7, like I'm 26 now, so that's like the last 9 years I've like felt more comfortable in my skin and like, you know, been like more exploratory. Like don't put on that makeup because it's gonna make you look dark. So like I had a very interesting relationship with like makeup, right? Like I was very scared for a very long time to like experiment. Right now I experiment all the time. You know, like my mom saying, or like people like, you know, in media, it's like, you know, A$AP Rocky saying dark skinned girls shouldn't wear red lipstick. It's not even in just like our communities, but it's also like the larger like society, you know, or like you have to work like twice as hard as a Black woman so you can get like a sliver of the recognition that your like white colleague would. And so I feel like there's so many different areas of my life where I'm like going against gravity. But honestly, like I'm so grateful. I feel like I'm the person that I am today because of it. I mean, obviously, like, I wish I could be the person that I am today without having to go through all that bullshit, but, like, it builds character, and, you know, now I'm, like, really grounded in who I am and, like, what I can be. You realize that your parents are also going through their own internal battles, like, as it relates to having, like, now moved to this new country, and, like, part of your identity is left back home and whatnot. So I feel like I give a lot of grace to my parents, but if I were to ever have children, like, I would make sure that they are unconditionally loved. I feel like the love my parents showed me was really conditional.
So then going back to pretty girl privilege, like how do you now feel like you relate to like the stereotype of like the Habesha female? Like do people identify you as Habesha, and if so, like
it's actually so funny because like if I'm like with my Somali friends, like people like I'll be like walking down the street with my Somali friends and they'll stop my Somali friends and be like, y'all are Habesha, right? And I'm the Habesha one, right? And then they're like, no, that's her. I think pretty girl privilege is interesting. I feel like Drake and like those artists, I love Drake, so I'm gonna mention Drake. You know, that young East African girl, like you too busy fucking with your other man. Like I really feel like there was like a moment in time where East African women and Habesha women were like at the forefront of pretty girl privilege. They were Black, but they also like weren't Black, and that's how it was perceived in society, right? Like you're like a easier on the eyes type Black, like you're Ethiopian, right? And like, you know, like trying to extract me from like the larger Black community. As it relates to like how I identify when it comes to pretty girl privilege, so I like grew up in LA, and I like, you know, LA is a very seedy place, and it's also very superficial, right? Like if I feel like New York, there's so many different types of people here, so like you can get away with like wearing the craziest thing, and like people will like accept you for who you are, and like in fact they'll even go like one step further, like I'm fucking with your boldness, right? But in LA, it's not like that. You have to like look a certain type, you have to be a certain type, you have to act a certain type. Guys in LA actually do not fuck with black women. Like the black guys don't, the white guys don't, the Asian guys don't, like the Hispanic guys don't, like no one does. We would go to the club, and it would just be like a bunch of white girls, a bunch of Hispanic girls, a bunch of Persian girls, and then there'd be me. But I would get into the club, and that's because the bouncer at the club, the people at the club, deemed me to be attractive enough to be in their space. So promoting is it's a game of how many attractive women can you get together in order to have like a cool experience, right? Like you get your own table, you get your own section or whatever, you get bottles or whatever. And I remember I had like black girlfriends, whether it be through college or like study abroad, and they were like Caribbean and stuff like that, and they're like, let's go out. And I'm like, okay, perfect. Like, my boyfriend's a promoter, like we'll be able to like get into a club for free and it'll be a good time. Like I had no idea this pretty girl privilege was a thing, and I had no idea that like black girls were exempt from that pretty girl privilege until I went to the club one day. I just turned 21 and there was a group of us black girls, and like, you know, I have my curly hair, girls have like straight hair, girls have like, you know, like they're like long locks, they have braids or whatnot, and we're dressed really well. And I literally remember walking in and the bouncer stops. After me, I was the first one to walk in. Literally, the bouncer like puts his hand down on like 3 other girls. He's like, no, you're not allowed to get in. You're fine. Your friends aren't allowed. And I'm just like, well, it can't be because we're black. Because I'm black and he let me in. So I remember like telling the guy that I was sitting at the time, I was like, yo, like, can you figure this out? I literally grabbed him to the side. He's like, they don't think they're pretty. And that's why they can't get in. Oh, I remember I was crying outside of the club drunk. I was like, what do you mean they're not pretty? And that makes sense because when you're in the club, they're really no black girls. And that also pushed me further into like my blackness. Like that moment, like, you know, like I told you, like dating him was very pivotal, like for me, and like as it relates to how I identify. Him telling me I should pretend to be Sri Lankan, him saying, oh yeah, well, you're pretty, your friends aren't, even though they are pretty. Right, they just weren't pretty to like the white guy at the door, like the bouncer. I was like, well, why would you let us come to here if you knew that's what the case was? Like, why did you allow us to embarrass ourselves? It's not like, oh, your outfit isn't cute, right, or like your makeup isn't done well. It's like, because you are black, I'm not letting you in here. They would like tell me, like sometimes they'd be like, yeah, like you're ethnically ambiguous. I'm like, what do you mean I'm ethnically ambiguous? I'm dark as fuck. And they're like, oh, like your hair, like your features, you have Eurocentric features. I fucking hate that shit. Eurocentric features. It was very ugly. I did it. It's so funny. I'm like pun intended, like no pun intended, like using the word ugly to describe pretty girl privilege. It just doesn't feel good when to the masses, because of like my hair texture and because of my Eurocentric features and because of my, people will like to say, oh well, your people have culture. Like I think it's the craziest thing is they try to differentiate like Africans and black Americans. They're like, well, your people have culture. Like you know where your family came from. You know, when someone told me you know where your family came from, I literally lost it. I was like, I cannot believe that you said this to me. And so it's really unfortunate when, you know, you're benefiting from things that are out of your control. And so the only thing that you can do is try to make things easier for people who might not be able to benefit from that, right? So like in that case, in the night club, I was like, you know what, if my girls ain't getting in, I'm not going in. I'm not gonna leave my girls here just to go to the fucking club. Like I'm gonna go to the club by myself. I obviously can't control everything, but what I can control is how I react to these types of things. And so in that case, like, I'll be like, I'll do whatever my friends want to do. There's One Oak Club. I've never been to a One Oak ever since then. They have One Oak in, they have like One Oaks in, like, I think they have one here, I think they have one in Miami, they have one in LA. I've never stepped foot into a One Oak ever since that night. Because I'm just like, why am I going to give these people money? So like I said, you go where you're celebrated. I don't, like when I do go out here, like I go out to like parties where I know it's safe, you know, where there's going to be a lot, like there's going to be a lot of black people, right? Because I just don't want to ever feel like that, and I don't want people that I'm with to ever feel like they're not good enough to be in a space because of something that they can't control. Because that's how I felt growing up.
I'd be interested in also hearing how like these beauty standards have impacted your relationships. It sounds like you do have like strong relationships with black women from a number of backgrounds, but I can imagine that, you know, being fetishized by black men, you know, impacts the way you develop those relationships, and then it can also impact black women's perception of you. So I was wondering if you had any experience of that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I feel like so I'm dating this guy, he's black American, he has his friend, his homegirl, she's like black American too. And it makes her feel some type of way that, I don't know if it makes her feel some type of way that I'm Habesha, or it makes her feel some type of way the way he treats me. Like, he treats me well. Love this man, he's fantastic. But I feel like she correlates his treatment of me to, it's because I'm Habesha. He's dated black women before, but he doesn't treat them nearly as well as he treats you. So the X factor is because you're African. And it's because not only are you African, but it's like you are from that region in Africa where women are like put on a pedestal in terms of like beauty.
What has she said to like make you feel that way?
She literally like, she's like, the only reason why you like her is because she's Habesha.
Oh, okay.
Like, she literally flat out said that to him, and he was like, no, it's not. He's like, her being Habesha is a bonus. Like, she's fantastic. Like, who she is as a person is why I'm with her and is why I treat her well. And on the other side, like, the brown guy that I was dating, the Bangladeshi, the reason that I met him through his sister, because I studied abroad with her, and I remember during, like, one of the last moments of our relationship, she was like, well, you can't be with her, she's black. I literally remember her saying that. And I was like, yo, we were friends. Like, we studied abroad together. Like, we traveled together. And she literally turned her back on me and told her, well, you cannot be with her because she's black. So it's just like, which one is it?
Did he tell you that?
I heard her say it.
Oh, wow. It sounds like you're very proud of your culture, but you're also very focused on just, like, navigating your own life. Like, would you say you, like, are active in any sort of like initiatives, or like are you interested in contributing to the continent, or are you just like, I'm in my 20s and I'm trying to figure my shit out?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and I think that's something that I've like learned about myself over the last few years, is that I want black people to win. We are all going through suffering. It might not be exactly identical, but we are experiencing oppression as a result of our skin tone. And so something that I wanted to do is, so like the internship that I was talking to, that I mentioned to you earlier, is a venture capital internship with Harlem Capital. It's like when I was like literally on the train, like doing stuff like that. And my eventual goal is to be an investor and then have some sort of footprint on the continent and be able to bring venture capital dollars to emerging black founders, ugly feeling and kind of just like balled it up together, and it's like, this is my purpose, and my purpose is to make it better for the generation after me and the generation after that, and like particularly for black people regardless of where they come from. Like, I started DEI at my last company. I was 23 years old, started DEI at this like fintech company. I had like 1,500 people. I was like, where are all the black people? And they're like, oh, like they're around. And I'm like, you know, like I literally started like this whole DEI initiative. It still exists even though I'm no longer there. It's because it's important to me. And I think community is important. I think people who, regardless if they share the same lived experience as you, people that you can lean on for support, people that you can go to in like times of need, I think it's very important. We grew up in a very community-oriented culture, right? Like, we didn't agree with some of the things that our community like passed down to us, but we had people, right? Like, and African communities and African culture is rooted in like, you know, it takes a village, right? And so I feel like you don't really have that type of like lifestyle here. It's not conducive to that. And so I really emphasize the importance of community. I emphasize finding your people regardless. I like your community is your chosen family. I feel like I found a really good community here. All the different types of people that I've met, whether they be Muslim, whether they're not Muslim, whether they're like African, whether they're not African. It's like embedded into like almost every single fiber of my being. It's like, how can I make it better? Not only for like myself, but also for others. Because usually people stop at the, how can I make it better for myself? But I'm like taking it that next step further, right? Like, okay, well, I figured my shit out, right? Like, how can I make it easier for others within like reason, right? Like, obviously I can't send thousands of dollars back home. If I could, I would, right? Within reason, right? But like, obviously, like, I wish I could like, you know, wave a magical wand and like the world is like a better place, right? But I can only do like what's within my capacity. Representation matters, and representation and decision-making capacities matters even more, right? Or else like we'll just be cast to the side and not taken into consideration when decisions are happening.
We are black, but if you look at places like DC, LA, Seattle, you have a very distinct Habesha community. You have little Ethiopias everywhere. But just how our communities interact with the black communities in our areas, and what you hope for the future in those relationships.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and something that I've been like trying to understand. And I think it's like a lot of African parents are like this. They have othered us from like our local black communities. They're like, no, you're not like them. I'm like, look, the police is not gonna pull up to me like, actually, she doesn't look like the other ones, we're gonna let her go. I'm like, no. And I was like, also, you know, you are here off the backs of civil rights, which was a movement that was started and created by these, like, you know, by like the local Black communities here. It's a lot of teaching my parents that, and it's also a lot of unlearning that I have to do because I grew up in that environment, right? Where my mom's like, well, you're not like them. Your hair is different. They only speak English. They don't have their own language. They don't have their own culture. And I was like, but you make it sound like that was a choice. You make it sound like they chose to not have a culture. They chose not to have language. In fact, American culture, and by means of like, you know, pop culture, is literally Black created. We're the generation that is bridging the gap between the lack of empathy, compassion, and knowledge on our like parents and like grandparents and our like aunts and uncles front, and also understanding like the Black experience here in America. I feel like we're very much in the middle of that. Like we're at the intersection of that, and so it's like, how can you make space and make room for their stories without, like, it's not me or them, right? It's us, right? And we just have different stories to tell. It's really interesting when he tells these stories, like old Brooklyn, like Nostrum is called NA Rock, and I tell him, I'm like, I love it when you tell me stories about like Brooklyn, because like, you know, the Brooklyn that I live in is like, there's the coffee shop right across the street, and there's the Pilates spot right there, right? But that wasn't a reality like 15, 20 years ago, and to make space for others that feel like they have been historically robbed of that privilege
of telling their stories.
Yeah. So that's like DEI, like, you know, like breaking Black kids into tech, like, you know, Black VC, like Harlem Capital, like all of this stuff. Like, I feel like it's very necessary. It's like I said, like representation and like decision-making capacities is vital to like our like success and to our like to a better and more equitable future. It's necessary, right? Like they say by the year 2050 it's going to be a minority-led country, right? Where this country is, because we're minorities now, but like in like 25 years from now it'll be the opposite. And so like, how can we make sure that our future generations are equipped with the necessary tools they need to be able to continue building a more equitable future? You know, like when I'm telling my mom about this guy that I'm dating, and like at first she was just like, she didn't really take it seriously because she was like, well, there's no way, right? And I'm just like, no, like he's a whole person who has his own stories, who has his own experience, that is worth sharing, that is worth celebrating. I was like, just because he comes from a place that you can't understand doesn't invalidate his existence as a whole. And so it's trying to like scale that ideology in a sense, and like, you know, like I said, be that bridge, right? Because like my mom wouldn't know that unless I told it to her, right? And I'm like, no, like you can't say that stuff because you are Black too, and you are here because of them. And so as much as like you would like to dissociate from that community, it's very much it's like a foundational reason as to why you're here and able to like live the life that you live.
I guess like back home in Africa, like even other countries don't necessarily identify with the word Black. Because
they don't.
If everyone's Black, then why would you use that?
Yeah.
So I think that's like one thing that even if other Africans don't like to admit it, I think all Africans struggle with is like identifying with that word.
I mean, race is like a social construct to like separate people into other people. And so, yeah, like in Africa, like we all look the same. Like, so there is no Black, right? There's just tribes and ethnic groups. But here it's like, well, there's a bunch of different people, right? So how do you classify these people when they're so different? It's interesting. I'm reading this book called *Sapiens*, and it's like the history of mankind. And so it's like starts off like pre-agriculture era, like Neanderthals, like Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, and like it like goes through the evolution of like human thought and like social construct. And so that's what made our like species different and resilient in terms of evolution, was because our ability to adapt and our ability to like think really like strategically and critically. And so yeah, it's like so interesting how like we came to this point. This is where we're at now, right? It's like, oh, like where you're like, you know, when you're filling out a job application, it's just like, do you identify as like Hispanic, not Latino, Latina, right? That's the first question they ask. And then like, if no, then are you like white, Asian, Black, Pacific Islander? Like goes down through like all these breakdowns. Does it really matter though? Like, why does it matter? Like race is just so intricately like weaved into like almost every single like fabric of society, and it like becomes so hard to like extract yourself from like your race.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why like being Black is like such a big deal here. It's just like you might not identify as Black first. You are Black, but that's not like your first identification point, right? You're like, oh no, like I'm HABESHA, right? But like to the people here, like you're Black first, because that's what you present.
You say you heard the word used back home at all?
Yeah, it's used pretty often, like when describing people.
Really?
Yeah. Or like when I say, I don't say Ethiopian food, I say Habesha food, because it's like both. Like when I think Habesha, I think of like the together of Ethiopia and Eritrea. I don't say, oh, it's Ethiopian New Year's. Oh, it's Habesha New Year. Mm-hmm. It's like Habesha food. It's like, you know, Habesha kamis. You don't say like Ethiopian kamis or whatever, you know. Yeah. And so I feel like it's just a descriptor. I've never seen it used in the context, and I've never used it in the context of like discriminatory or divisive or anything like that. I've heard feedback that that's how some people can like receive it as like, oh, like I'm not Habesha, I'm Eritrean. And I'm like, oh, like I didn't know that. Like I'm Eritrean too. Like let me know if I'm like stepping on your toes here. But like to me, Habesha just means like both Ethiopia and Eritrea.
Have you heard or have they given justification why they would say that?
They would say, yeah. So the most common thing I've heard is that like Ethiopia annexed Eritrea and was it like the 30s or something, and like didn't want to. They didn't want to be a part of it, and so they feel like they were forced to be part of an empire or of a country that they didn't identify with, and therefore it feels like you using the term Habesha is neglecting the fact that they were forced to be part of this like region and forced to be part of this culture that they might not identify with. Those
are all my questions. Okay. Do you have like any last thoughts?
I feel like I've touched upon things that I didn't even realize like I could speak to. Just so it's like therapy, you know, you just sit there and all of a sudden like the floodgates open and you're just like talking about like all the experiences that I've had, like within the community, outside of the community, with like my family, like with the Muslims, with the Eritreans, with the Ethiopians, with like African diaspora, with Black people. I feel like it's all led me to like this exact moment, like as to where I am, and like has helped me cultivate like what my purpose is and like what my role is in society. I'm like very happy that I'm at the place where I'm at today. It took a lot of work. I've been in therapy for 3 years. It's taken so much to get to this point. And it shouldn't have been that hard. In like hindsight's 2020, I just feel like I shouldn't have had to go through all the different things that I go through from people that look like me and from people that come from the same place that I do. Which I think is great that you're doing this, because like everyone can speak to like their own experience, and like we can like you said, it's like meant to be provocative, right? Like yeah, like you think like we're this great like happy-go-lucky community, but actually there's like a lot of fucked up shit that goes in like behind closed doors.
Just because like to your point, like people think there's not much to talk about, or like with your parents like invalidating your experience, I think Habesha people love sweeping things under the rug.
Yeah, they do. Like they don't even say I'm sorry. They're just like, did you eat? Are you hungry? Yes. Did you eat? Like, no, I didn't, because I'm fucking sad over here crying over the shit that you said to me 2 hours ago. Did you eat? Because you have such a diversity of people, like you'll get so many like nuggets of knowledge.
Yeah.
That, like the al-Habashi like instance, right, where it's like an Arabic word or something like that. Like I probably didn't do the origins of it justice. Like there's just so much like within like that region itself. Like it would be so like difficult to have a conversation with 1 to 2 people and like be able to like understand it all.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're probably not going to be able to understand all of it, even with like thousands of people, right? But it's like doing the best that you can and in service of those stories and in service of those experiences.
Exactly.
Good shit.